Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2017 Ford Explorer, we're going to be showing you how to install the Demco base plate kit. Before we get into that though, let's take a minute, we'll check it out and make sure it's going to work for you. A base plate is going to be one of the 5 major components that you're going to need to flat tow your Explorer down the road. The other 4 will be your tow bar, your safety cables, your diode wiring, and your supplemental braking system. With these Explorers, I also like to recommend an automatic battery disconnect switch. Just makes setting everything up and going into flat tow mode a lot more straightforward. Now with that in mind, usually I like to go outside, hook up to a coach and everything like that, but we have some inclement weather here today, so bear with us. But this is the way the front of your Explorer can look whenever you're not hooked up and flat towing, which I do think is important. And for the amount of stuff that you have to put up here, you know, I don't really think it looks too bad for the most part. And compared to some of the other base plates, they're all going to be fairly similar in appearance. You know, you'll definitely notice that they're there, but you know, I've definitely seen worse. That is for sure. But one of the nice things with this particular base plate, well, a couple things really. They give you a bracket here that attaches to it, which makes mounting up some of your other components a lot more straightforward. Your wiring connector there, and your supplemental braking parts. As far as the fitment goes with this base plate, I feel like it's a pretty safe bet across the board. And I say that because of some of the other ones, they won't be compatible with certain models and certain features. So for example, some of the base plates won't be compatible with active air shutter systems or particular engines and things like that. And to my knowledge, this setup will work across the board. So pretty safe bet there if you're unsure what your Explorer is equipped with. This will probably work out for you. Whenever you are ready to actually hook up and everything though, it's a pretty simple process. They do give you these plugs that go into the base plate when you're not using it, which I think is a nice touch. It looks cleaner and it'll keep the inside cleaner too. That way it don't get all rusted out or anything like that. And you're gonna have these removable arms here. The way these will work, those holes in that will line up with little holes on the side of the base plate there. You put it in, rotate it a quarter turn, then you're just going to have a little pin and clip here to lock it in place. And the same setup on the other side. Just like that. And now that's going to give us the attachment point we need to be able to hook our tow bar up. Now, as far as what tow bars are going to be compatible with this, there's quite a few of them. The etrailer tow bars, the Demco tow bars, and I'm fairly certain there's a handful of other ones that are directly compatible. If you come to find out, let's say for example, I know for sure the Roadmaster brand tow bars aren't going to be directly compatible. If you already have that tow bar and you like it and you want to use this base plate, chances are really good that there's an adapter available that you could put on your tow bar end and allow you to hook those two up. Other than all that, not really a whole lot to this. You know, it's a simple concept. You know, attaches to the front of your Explorer and gives us that connection point we need to allow us to hook our tow bar up and get flat towing down the road. As far as the installation goes, I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely time consuming. You do have to remove the front fascia and you know, modify a couple things. It's definitely not the worst one that I've done, nor the easiest. Somewhere in the middle for sure, but I'll show you along the way a few of the things that I found that kind of makes it a little bit easier and hopefully can speed up that process for you. With that said, if this is something you don't want to mess with, have the time, whatever the case may be, I definitely get it. You can always use our dealer locator network, and that can help you find a shop in your neighborhood that can set this up for you. But if you're doing it yourself, hang around. We'll go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we need to get the front fascia removed. So go ahead and pop the hood. And on top here, we're going to have several fasteners that we can remove. We'll have some of these that'll be a 10 millimeter head that kind of just run along the length of the top here. while we're right here, there's also going to be 2 of these little push pins, one right here and one just like it on the other side. And the way you get these removed, you can just take a flathead screwdriver, pry underneath the head of it, and that'll let you pull the base out. So we'll just continue to work our way down here. Once you have all those fasteners removed, you can take this piece of plastic and set it off to the side for now. Moving underneath the front of our Explorer now, we're going to have 3 screws in the center, and in our case, the plastic's broken around them already, but that's what they'll look like. I'm not even going to bother to take them out because they're broken, you know, but if yours are attaching the fascia to the bottom here, you'll want to get those removed using an 8mm socket. Moving to the side, underneath here, where our wheel aligner kind of comes up and connects, we're going to have 3 8mm head bolts. From this point on, whatever we do to one side over forward, we'll also do to the other side. You set up the same way. And get these removed. Moving to your wheel wells now, it helps if you turn your wheels in or out, one way or the other. It gives you more room to work, but along the edge, for our wheel well liner, we're going to have a handful of 5.5mm screws. So we'll just work our way up so we get them all removed here. Looks like this will be the last one up here. What I've done now, I just took some painter's tape and put it along the seams where we're going to be working. That way we don't accidentally scratch anything up. But this piece of wheel well trim here, you can just grab it and just work it free up till about here should be fine. At this point, your plastic wheel well liner, you just bend that up out of the way, and it's extremely difficult to actually see in here. Just not a lot of room to get the camera in there, but where your fascia meets your quarter panel, you're going to have 3 10mm head bolts, one about here, here, and here. The head of the bolt will be on the top side, all right? And it's either a 10mm, and I found it almost easiest to use a wrench like this to get in there, but whatever you use, you're going to have to get these removed here. I was able to get those bolts out, and just since we can't really see up there, I figured I'd at least show you what they look like. So that's what you're looking for in there, and they do have Loctite on them. Ours did at least, so they're pretty tight. Just stay patient, you'll be able to get them pulled out. On our driver's side here, we'll have this electrical connector, and we're going to disconnect it now. So you can just push down on this tab and pull the 2 ends apart. So what I've done now, I just took a little piece of foam or something to put right here to keep our wheel well, a little trim piece pulled away, and we can start to get our fascia removed. And you're going to want to pull down on it first, and while you're slightly pulling down, if you reach your hand in behind there, there will be a tab that you can push in while you're pulling down, which we'll see in just a second. So that was it there. I was just kind of pushing in on that to release it, and I'll go ahead and do the same thing to the other side, get it to that point, and then we can get it completely removed. It may not be a bad idea too if you're by yourself doing this. Before you even do this, if you want to just take a bolt or 2, put it there in the top, hand tight. That way we don't have to worry about the fascia just falling off on us, So now with the next set of hands here, you get both sides of that point, and the fascia more or less just comes right off. That's really all it's holding on. Check for any other electrical connectors. That one that we disconnected was it. And with this removed now, we'll set it off to the side. We are going to need to remove our bumper beam, which is held in place with 4 bolts on each side. But there's also, on this very end here, there's a couple of spot welds. So if we pull the bolts out, you know, we still won't be able to get the bumper removed. So I'm going to drill these spot welds out first before we mess with the bolts. Just have a bit a little bit bigger in the size of them, and we'll run it all the way through. Do that same thing to get these other pinch welds separated. With those pinch welds taken care of, we'll have 4 13mm head bolts. And pull out. What I like to do with the last one in the corner here is take it out and then put a couple threads in hand tight. You know, I got it set up like this on the other side too. And what we should be able to do is just kind of pry on the bumper. You know, to free that little remaining pinch weld there. It's usually pretty common to have to do that. And then we'll pull these out that we left in by hand. Set our bumper off to the side. You can do a little trimming now. In our case, you know, yours might look a little bit different. You might have an active shutter system here, but there's diagrams and instructions that'll tell you where to trim. More or less, any of this plastic stuff that'll be in the way of the base plate needs to come off. So in our case, we just have this little tab like this on each side. That's the only thing that we need to remove. Over here on our passenger side, we're going to have our washer fluid reservoir, and there's 3 bolts or 3 fasteners holding it in. You got one right there. It's an 11mm. We'll remove it. This one, I'm going to loosen up pretty much all the way. Leave a few threads on it. This one I'll pull out completely. That's has an 8mm head. So then you kind of be able to maneuver this and give you extra room for the base plate. And I'm also going to disconnect this electrical because our base plate will kind of fit up in there. So just a tab, you push down, pull that out. We can grab our base plate now and just kind of show you how this is going to work. On each side of it, you're going to have these 2 attachment points, and these are going to sit up on the bottom of the frame rail. This hole here is going to line up with an existing hole in the frame, but this one we're going to have to drill out an opening. So let's check out the frame rail and show you what we're talking about here. Here's the hole that I was talking about on the frame rail. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take the base plate, hold it into position, line up those 2 holes, right? Or that one we talked about with the factory one. Make sure the base plate's all centered and everything. And I'm going to come in with a pair of clamps here, clamp the base plate down, and then use it as a template to find our back hole that we need to drill out. We're holding this up, you know, make sure we got everything centered and everything. As best we can. You can always make minor adjustments if you need to once the base plate is clamped in place. Well, we're pretty close. We'll go ahead and lock this down. With it lined up and everything how we want it, I'm going to come in with a marker and using that back hole as a template. So come in and make a mark where we need to drill. And once you get both sides like that, we can unclamp our base plate, get it out of the way. That way we have the space we need to drill those out. Whenever you drill these out, what I like to do is start with the small bit and use that as a pilot, more or less. Make sure that we're all centered up and everything. then if you got a step bit, I find that these work pretty well. If not, you know, you can always just kind of work up in size to the final diameter. Once I got that hole drilled out, I am going to come back with a paint stick here and just put a little paint on that bare metal to help prevent, you know, future rust or corrosion issues. Once you got both those holes drilled out and everything, take the base plate, clamp it back into position, and then I'm going to start with the smaller bolt. So the attachment point that we just drilled. Take this 1/2-inch bolt and we'll put it in the frame. I can manage to line this up here. Push it down through the bottom. And then you're going to take a flat washer and a split lock washer, put that on the bottom of the bolt, and then just a regular nut here. And all of the hardware that we're going to use to secure the base plate, you want to put on some of that blue Loctite. All right? So, gonna work our way in here. It's a little tight with this clamp, but my thought is if we get this one in first, then we can move the clamp and have more room for the next bolt. So we'll just get this started hand tight. And we'll remove that clamp out of our way. For the next hole, you can take the big bolt, drop that down on through. It'll be the same combination, you'll just have, you know, larger hardware. A flat washer, split lock washer, hex nut with the Loctite on it, and get that started. You can grab your side supports now, and with these two holes in it are going to line up those two holes in the base plate there. And you can take a bolt, put on a split lock washer and a flat washer, your Loctite. Same thing for this one. And on the back side where the bolt comes through, you're simply just going to take a nut and thread it on. We'll come back and snug down the bolts that we put in the frame. So for the large one, you can take a 15/16 wrench, hold the head of it, and on the bottom I also have a 15/16. Snug that up. And then we can change out for a 3/4 inch wrench and socket. Do the same thing for that one closer to the rear of the vehicle. For the bolts here on the side, I have a 9/16 socket and wrench. Go ahead and snug those down too. You want to come back with your torque wrench now and completely tighten down all the hardware to the specifications. We can use our side support now as a template to drill through this piece of sheet metal, kind of just like we did on the bottom of the frame. So I'll run it all the way through, and just be careful if you got a long bit, you know, kind of deep in there, there's hoses and stuff. Just make sure you don't damage anything. Once you get that hole drilled, you can take this bolt, has a serrated head on it, and a nylon lock nut. Put on your Loctite. We're going to pass this through. Get it tightened down. we'll come back and completely tighten it with our torque wrench here. Moving over here to the passenger side, our washer tank, I've removed one of the last nuts there. And what you can do is pull that off and then take one of the nuts that they give you and put that over the studs. So you got the one stud on the top and then the one down there. And these are just being used as spacers, more or less. We'll line this back up. And you know, those two nuts you can put back on from the factory. I just grabbed one of them. I left the other one over on my toolbox there, but I'll do the same thing on that. And then for this one, you can take another nut on the bolt. Get that started. So I'll go to the box, grab the last nut for over here, come back, and we'll tighten everything down. So once that's tight, if you remember, we unplugged this as well. So we'll go ahead and pop that back into position. You can grab your bumper beam now, take the factory hardware, get them all started and tight, and then we'll just get a line back up and snug it back down. You're going to need to install your safety cables, which I've done. And what I did is I just took the cable, took one end of it, wrapped it around itself through, came up over the frame. And if you look at it from the front here, you know, I just connected everything together using the provided quick links there. And just something that I like to do is take zip ties and kind of zip tie it up. That way it'll stay a lot more secure and not clunk around and everything when we're driving down the road. At this point, it'd be a great time to install some of your other flat towing components, like your wiring, your braking system, things like that. And that's because with the fascia out of the way, it's a lot easier to route wires and everything else. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And then once we have that wrapped up, we'll come back, revisit this, trim out our fascia if needed, and get everything reinstalled. I was able to get all of our other components installed on the front of our Explorer, and now it's time to get the fascia put back together. So you will need to do some trimming. There is a diagram and instructions. It kind of gives you a rough idea on where you need to cut, so you can use that. But a lot of times, everyone's scenario is going to be a little bit different depending on where you mount up some of your other components and everything. So what I did, I just took the fascia, loosely put it in place, put a couple of bolts hand tight up there at the top to keep it from falling off. And I'm just going to kind of cut as we go here. You know, we'll hopefully trim a little bit out, and the fascia will continue to fall into place, if you will. So I got a pair of snips. These seem to work pretty well, making clean cuts. Doing it this way too, you kind of remove as little as possible. So kind of just trying to guess on where you're going to need to cut, and then it don't fit right and stuff like that. So I'll continue just kind of trim away here until we get everything to be able to kind of drop back into place. I was able to get our fascia put back into position just like we talked about. You know, I just continued to cut a little bit as we go, push this in place and cut a little more, work everything out, right? And you'll know when it's right. It kind of goes into position. And you really don't need to get too carried away. I think it turned out pretty good. But once it all snaps back together, you'd simply just reinstall the fascia the opposite way that you removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Demco baseplate kit on our 2017 Ford Explorer.